real lives, real people, non-identity. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching or listening to this, and welcome to another episode of the Non-Identity Podcast. Now, this week we're joined by someone who has set up a 12-week intense dating program. It's Yael Dubin. Hi, Yael. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lee. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Before we get into your dating program, can you just tell everyone a bit about yourself, where you grew up?
Yeah. So where I grew up in my whole life, I'm getting older, so it's a long story, but I grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago and made my way to Arizona when I was about 30 and have spent the majority of my adult years here in Arizona ever since then. Back in the day until the mid 2000s, I worked as a psychiatrist, and then I left the mental health field and became an educator. And now I'm in my retirement career, and I'm a dating and relationship coach.
Okay. What made you get into psychology, first of all?
So it was sort of an accident, but my mom owned a bar growing up, a tavern, and our house was connected to it. And I think I just always grew up trying to understand people and listening to people, as bartenders tend to do. And so I think when I went to medical school, I found that, patients just trusted me. They felt comfortable talking to me because I sort of had that bartender personality. And so that I did really well at it. I was really encouraged to do it. And that just I fell into it, really.
How did you find the studying and stuff? Was it intense or?
It was really intense. I mean, medical school is intense, and studying is intense. So residency was intense, and really spending a lot of time with people who were struggling and suffering intensely. All of that was really difficult. I was a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I did my child and adolescent fellowship on the west side of Chicago, which I think was probably the most intense and most difficult part of all of my training, is working with young people who had suffered so many traumas and losses, and really, or just were diagnosed with serious mental illness at a young age, and just the limits of being able to help them and at that time.
Yeah, so for the last 20 years, I've been working in education with young people. So yeah, I know the struggles of working with young people, and it's so rewarding, but it can be so intense sometimes as well.
Yeah, I mean, it can definitely be intense. And I think I think education is amazing, which is, that's where I ended up ultimately, education. I know personally for me, teachers made a huge difference in my life. I know my 6th grade teacher, I always credit with every success I've ever had since then. And so education being so important, what I found when I was teaching at the college level was it was still an opportunity to help people transform their lives. It just focused more on their strengths than on their weaknesses. And that really was important to me, is to highlight what's right with people, what they do well at already. Where are they strong? How can they use that to overcome a weak area?
So you're now a dating coach. What is a dating coach?
What is a dating coach? So that's a really great question. There are different kinds of dating coaches and different approaches. So some people will tell you, how to dress, how to groom, how to talk, how to behave, when to call next, all that stuff. That is not necessarily the type of dating coach I am. I'm more the type of dating coach that helps people get really clear and confident about who you are, what you're about, what you have to offer somebody, what it is you need from someone, what your emotional needs are, what you want to create in your life in the future. And then after all of that kind of inner work on yourself, then we set about getting a strategy for you to meet your partner, someone who is going to love building the same life that you're interested in building, and someone who just the way they show up in the world kind of meets your emotional needs.
Do you help support in the matching, matching people?
So I don't matchmake. That's like matchmakers do that particular piece of it. And I don't matchmake. But what I do is I help people strategize how they're going to meet people and how they're going to approach dates in a way that make it more likely they're going to get really clear about what this other person's about. Who are they? What are they about? What's their deal? So I help people figure out what apps they're going to use, how they're going to set up their profile on those apps. Where are they going to go in their real life on the day-to-day to meet people, like at a dance class or at a public event? How are they going to do that? What will they say? How will they know? What kind of questions can they ask that will get them really good information pretty quickly as to whether or not this person might be a good match for them?
And you've created a 12-week intense program. What's that about?
So yeah, it's a 12-week program, and it starts out really, what I talk about in my program is how to become a self-led dater. And being self-led is all about leading your life in the direction you choose. And a lot of people out there right now don't feel like they have much choice or much control over their dating lives. And they feel like, oh, I can get whatever job I want, but I can't get the right partner. I can't make it work for me. And the reality is, you absolutely can get a great partner and you can make it work for you. You just need to learn a few new things. And so I talk with people about how to date from that self-led perspective. And we start out with mindfulness practice and really learning how to stay calm and centered on dates and when things get stressful. Talk about what your values and goals are for your future life. What are your emotional needs? Work on some communication skills so people have conflict resolution skills. I know that, like, really, whether a marriage or any relationship lasts over the long haul, it's more about how you handle conflict than it is about how you handle good times. Because how you can handle conflict can really ruin whatever goodwill you've built up during the good times. So really helping people learn to handle conflict with grace and integrity, helping them get closure on past relationships. Like, old losses haunt us, right? The things we wish we had done differently, the things that we wish we didn't experience, times that we got betrayed, and maybe we're kind of hurt. We carry hurt feelings about that. Or, like, a lot of people carry feelings that deep down inside, they're just not sure they're lovable. So really kind of closing all of those woundedness from past relationships, and then going to that happy part of getting clear on what it is you want in your life. What do you want to create? What do you want to experience? What are your core needs, and what type of person is most likely to show up just who they are, and they're going to meet those needs? That's just who they are. It's going to naturally be awesome for you. Yeah. So, and then the last 3 weeks of the program are when people go out and date and implement all that they've learned and start working on that dating strategy and go out and date from that place where they're super clear, calm, and confident about who they are, what they have to offer. And they're able to have courageous conversations with people that they pretty much hardly know and really get below the surface right away.
Well, I totally agree with you about past trauma in relationships playing an impact, because I've been with my wife 17 years, we married for 6. But my mum left when I was 9, sort of in the middle of the night. And it took me 10 years to trust my wife, because I'm just sitting there thinking, I was telling her, you're going to leave me, because I thought if the closest woman to me can walk out on me at a young age, then anyone will. So I kept telling her every year, I'm just waiting for you to leave. And it took about 10 years to get over that. And it still creeps in every now and then now, but I'm a lot more relaxed about it.
Yeah, it does. It really can. So one of the things you're talking about also is like trauma. What that brings up for me is things like attachment and attachment trauma. So losses that you have in childhood, or if you were ever abused, or if you had a caregiver who was violent or unstable, you, like, your whole psyche revolves around trying to maintain some connection with them. And it comes up in like relationships that are really close in romance. So a lot of people, just like you're saying, they kind of know that they can trust this person, but they have a part that just isn't so sure and says, oh, you're going to leave, or I'm going to keep you at a distance because you're going to leave anyway. What's the point of getting involved? And one of the things about self-leadership is really getting the ability to be calm, clear, and compassionate with yourself, with those parts of yourself, so that you can sort of do a U-turn, turn back to yourself and say, hey, I know that I'm afraid of this, but no matter what happens, I've got you. I've got this. I'm going to be okay. I've got these parts of me. I'm going to take care of them. When you get there, you can start to form what is called an earned, secure adult attachment, which is what you're talking about. Like, after 5 or 10 years, you actually can unlearn all of that bad stuff and attach securely to a person. And it takes a specific kind of relationship to be able to do that. And what I do in my 12-week intensive is it's like a crash course in all the skills that you need to get a secure attachment in adult life if you didn't have one before. And the thing about security is you can have had a great childhood, But if you get left, say it was not your mom who left in the night, but it was a wife, your first wife, your second wife has a lot to carry, a lot to work through there to get you back in a place where you can trust a person. That's like a huge disruption. So I help people recover and give them the skills they need to repair that woundedness and get that security back within themselves and within a partnership.
Do you find like men or women more harder to get to that point, or does it not matter?
Honestly, men are harder to get to that point. And part of it, it's just like the difference in how people are raised. Men are not raised or encouraged to be emotionally aware. Men are raised to be able to know what their feelings are and to be able to deal with them. They're raised to shove them down and then die, and not have feelings. And women are allowed to have feelings to some degree, but we're not allowed to be angry. That's the one feeling we're not allowed to have. That's the only feeling men are allowed is anger. You can have that one. So we've split up all the emotions, and men get anger, women get everything else. But what the truth about emotions really is, all they are is information. They're just data. That's it. They point the way to an unmet need. They point the way to a frustrated hope. They point the way to a value that isn't being lived up to. It's just information. That's all it is. And so when you cut off all the information except anger, you're missing a lot of information. That would be like, driving with your sense of feel and wearing a blindfold while you're doing it. Of course, you're going to wreck. You don't have information about what's on the road. Of course, you're going to wreck. And like for women, it's like only seeing, but not knowing, where the steering wheel is, or not knowing where your foot is on the gas pedal. You need all that data to really be able to get to where you want to be in life. And so men are harder because they're taught not to do it, and they're taught that it's a weakness, but it's actually a superpower. You just need to learn to use your emotions and not let them use you.
That's it. And have you found that COVID and people being locked away for 2 years has sort of lowered people's social abilities to interact with each other?
Oh, yeah, a lot. It's really interesting. I'm hearing this from many people about many different things. People are having a harder time tolerating other people than they used to. Like introverts were like, yeah, I had 2 years of my life. I want that back. I want to be an introvert again. Just let me go home again. Which, I work from home now, so I'm totally in my happy place. And then there are other people who are just kind of out there with a lot of anger. And I think we can all kind of feel this kind of unrest. We're not used to each other anymore. And we have to build up that ability to leave space for others, to make room for people to be different than us and to be okay with that, to kind of shrug off what we used to be able to shrug off.
Brilliant. And what makes a good first date?
What makes a good first date is getting a clear sense of whether or not this person has the potential, just by who they are, to be a great pair, a great match for you, period. Because the goal isn't to get a second date. The goal is to meet the right person that you can create a life with. And so the best first date is one where you get a good sense of whether or not that person has the raw material.
Coming up to the last question. So this answer will not change your life journey, but if you had 30 seconds with your 13-year-old self, what would you say?
Oh, sweetheart, it's going to get so much better than this. Don't give up. That's it.
Brilliant advice. Well, if people want to find you or find out more about what you do, where can they find you?
They can find me at bahiracoaching.com. They can find me on Facebook. I'm Yael Dubin, and I would love to hear from them.
And we'll put all the links in the description below so people can get to you quickly. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. And I'd love for you to come back on in a couple of months and we'll go a bit more in depth into your program.
That sounds lovely. Thanks so much for having me on, Lee.